is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Malta's armed forces take control of a tanker seized by migrants off the coast of Libya. Public mistrust hampers the DRC's Ebola response as cases climb. And waterborne diseases threaten relief efforts in Mozambique as the country confirms 5 cases of cholera. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour, a look at South Africa's Democratic Alliance and its proposals to keep the country's lights on. And South Africa's Proteas looking forward to a Cricket World Cup without the tag of favourites. Well, let's start the hour in the Mediterranean, where Maltese armed forces have taken control of a merchant vessel allegedly hijacked by migrants. The migrants seized the vessel on Wednesday after they were rescued off the coast of Libya. They then ordered it to head towards Italy. The vessel, crew and the 120 migrants have now been handed over to the police for further investigation. Both Italy and Malta had vowed to keep the vessel out of their territorial waters. Drama unfolded after the migrants were told they would be taken back to Libya. Asylum seekers say they are beaten, raped and even sold as slaves in Libyan detention centers. Now, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, health workers say public mistrust is now the biggest obstacle to stopping the epidemic. It has infected more than 1,000 people in eastern Congo since July. A report by Harvard University researchers reveals that a quarter of those surveyed in Ebola hotspots in the country believed the virus was not real. This means they were 15 times less likely to seek healthcare and 5 times less likely to accept vaccinations, with many concealing their symptoms. The researchers found that trust in public authorities had already fallen in Beni and Butembo before Ebola hit. That's due to decades of conflict and poor governance. Now, although the World Health Organization and charities are running community engagement programs, these have not been well integrated with the medical response. Well, for more information, here's Tarek Yaserovic, the spokesperson for the World Health Organization, with an update on the Ebola situation in the DRC.
From the beginning of this outbreak, we operate in a very challenging situation with a particular security context that we have seen have hampered efforts on several occasions. However, WHO is on the ground. We will remain on the ground, and we commit to work together with the Ministry of Health and other partners to end this outbreak. Well, for several weeks, we have seen a number of cases declining, and then in a past week or two, we see again a rise in numbers. Obviously, we have been seeing this before. There could be weeks with more cases and then weeks with less cases. The bottom line is that there is still a virus circulating, and there are people being infected. There could be several reasons for seeing these occasional spikes. It can be better reporting. It can be that we get to know where people are. It can be also simply because of the security incidents. People were not able to be treated, and they were in the community infecting other people. What is really important is that we get into the heart of the communities, make sure that they take the ownership of the response, and we all put in place necessary measures. We have done that in a number of occasions. So in many areas that were affected by Ebola at the beginning of the outbreak, we have not seen a virus for some time now. So right now, the outbreak is concentrated into 2 cities, the twin cities of Katwa and Butembo, and we are working really around the clock trying to make sure that everyone who is sick gets to treatment center. Whoever is at risk is being vaccinated and followed up, and that community does what is needed to protect itself. We would like to thank all the all the support we have received so far from donors, also hard work of all the partners under the leadership of the Ministry of Health. For next 6 months, WHO has issued an appeal for $148 million in order to carry out all the response activities. So far, we have received around 50% of that. We are confident that donors will come forward as they've done in the past. Again, it is important that we stay there, because I was just talking about some gains that we have made about the areas that have not seen any new cases lately. But these gains could be lost if we don't maintain our presence. So really, keeping our troops on the ground, WHO alone has almost 700 people in affected areas, and making sure that we don't let a virus get ahead of us. As we have seen, Ebola outbreak, there would be occasional epidemiological curve would go up and down. What is important again is that we managed to contain outbreak in a number of locations, so we know how to do it, and we have people on the ground. We have this vaccine that has averted thousands of more infections. We also know that there is no victory over Ebola without community engagement. That's why we are going right now in the heart of affected communities to try to explain what needs to be done to make sure that that community is with us. Often these attacks have been attributed to the community, and it is important to say that these attacks on Ebola facilities were really attacks not by the community, on the community, by armed groups. Most of people do accept Ebola measures. For example, 90% of those who are eligible to be vaccinated do accept to do so. 80% of burials in the community are done in a secularized way. So we just have to really push to be in position to have all necessary measures in place.
Well, let's turn now to health concerns in Mozambique. The risk of cholera is now becoming a major concern in and around Beira as the floodwaters subside from Cyclone Idai. Makeshift camps are being established across the province and in the city to accommodate survivors. Angela Coppola is in Beira with this report.
The government lead minister for Idai response efforts says that they are coping with the influx of survivors. Worryingly, the country's national health director, Hussein Isi, says there are now 2,500 confirmed cases of acute diarrhea and 5 confirmed cholera cases.
We're having a big increase in cases of diarrhea, and we already identified 5 cases of cholera in the city of Beira, Bairro da Munhava. So this is something that is of concern of the government, and we have teams deployed all over the provinces and the affected area.
The country's public health department is responsible for its hospitals and treatment centres with the help of the aid agency's resources.
From now, every day we'll have the right number of cases. You know, in the total cases of diarrhea, some are not cholera and other are cholera.
A cholera outbreak was a distinct probability and something authorities and aid agencies were planning for. A cholera treatment centre should be up and running on Wednesday at the Beira Central Hospital.
Well, we are happy, yes. That's why we are just monitoring this site, because the site where we are attending patients now is smaller. So at the end of the day, we move all the patients from that to this side. So I think it will be better to attend them.
With just 5 cases reported thus far, it's still early days, but the authorities are taking no chances.
We have around 170,000 people in our camps, which we are improving as the days go by. Most of them already have doctors there, have clear water and other means of assistance.
I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Beira, Mozambique.
Well, ordinary South Africans have banded together to help their neighbours across the border in Mozambique. Aid is now reaching affected areas much faster since those flood waters receded. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire with more.
The Midnight Train to Beira is an initiative started by a group of friends in Johannesburg to help people affected by Cyclone Idai in Mozambique.
Because of what we had seen on media and in what we've seen happen to the people of Mozambique. So we came up with the initiative Midnight Train to Beira, and we said we are going to do something about this. These are our neighbors. To us, they're right next door, like they're right here. And something that happens to them, it's almost as if something's happening to us.
In just a few days after the group put out a call, food, clothing and other essential items came pouring in from all over the country. The items will be transported to Beira by road in a convoy forming a train.
We came down with a list of items to include in what we call a care pack. Hygiene items, clothing, non-perishable foods, and we put together what we call a care pack. So the people, when they come with their stuff here, they're coming with a care pack.
Many of the victims are now homeless and being housed in makeshift camps. Solar-powered lights are in the packs and will help where electricity lines have been washed away or damaged.
It can work up to 8 hours and you can switch it on and off as long as you have a solar little panel. So for Mozambique, because these people are displaced, they don't have any homes, they don't have any lighting system, this will work absolutely 100%.
Dozens of volunteers have turned up to pack and help.
Today we are uniting Africa. Today we are helping people who are truly in need. What happened in Mozambique, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe is we are not immune to. It's something that we might face in the future. But today we just thought, you know what, for those who can, they've contributed financially. For those who can, they're here to contribute through sweat and through time.
I think it's about time that we show that as Africa we can stand with each other and that we are not always standing there and waiting for overseas people to come and help us. Secondly, we need to feed these families. You can imagine if you were in this kind of a situation, you really need people to come and help you and assist you.
All these supplies are being loaded onto trucks for the long journey to Mozambique. Some volunteers will join the midnight train to Beira and hand over the care packs to hundreds of destitute people. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, of course, as we know, Zimbabwe too has been reeling from the aftermath of the tropical storm. Government and agencies have been struggling to help the displaced, but they're not giving up, scrambling even to meet their basic needs. CGTN's Mtongana has more.
The cyclone Idai has left hundreds dead, thousands displaced and many more missing in Zimbabwe. Cherukai stands in what was once fertile land. The 47-year-old watched as a bus carrying 3 people fell down this cliff, killing everyone on board.
When we saw the bus falling over, we didn't understand what was going on. We just stood there watching. It felt like a dream, a nightmare. We couldn't grasp that the bus was actually falling over the cliff.
Local authorities are appealing for more aid to assist the struggling families.
People lost everything. So for us to say we need this or that, I think we will be understating. Whatever anyone can provide, it will be desperately needed.
Cyclone Idai has left at least 259 people dead in Zimbabwe, according to the UN Migration Agency. Relief focus is now shifting to contain inevitable outbreaks of diseases like malaria and cholera. Mtongana, CGTN.
Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, a key coalition partner backs the army's call for the removal of Algeria's President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. And MPs fail to break the Brexit deadlock as Prime Minister May offers to resign if legislators pass her Brexit plan.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice. Right, let's go to Algeria now, where the coalition ally of Algeria's ruling party has added their voice to calls for President Abdelaziz Bouteflika to resign. The pressure has been piling on the ailing leader since the army chief demanded he be declared unfit to govern. CGTN's Susan Mongeli reports.
The coalition ally of Algeria's ruling party is the latest to speak out against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. They are calling for the ailing president's resignation, following nationwide protests since February. The ruling FLN party had originally backed Bouteflika's candidacy. On Tuesday, though, the country's influential army chief declared Bouteflika unfit for office.
Within this context, we have to find a solution that gets the country out of the current crisis and that responds to the legitimate demands of the Algerian people. A solution that guarantees respect for the constitution and the continuation of the state authority.
The military is widely seen as a silent kingmaker in Algerian politics.
This is a brave decision, and it's the first step on the path for democracy that is still long. We appreciate this step, and we are awaiting other steps. The movement will continue until the realization of a democratic republic, the Second Republic.
Citizens in the North African country have taken to the streets in the capital Algiers and in other major cities. They want a younger generation of leaders that can fight corruption and create more jobs.
I am not happy because the one who will govern now was in the old regime. We don't want old faces. We want Algerian university graduates, for example. They say there aren't any with the necessary qualities, but we do have them.
Presidential elections were due in April, but Bouteflika has postponed them indefinitely. The president, who has been in power for 2 decades, announced in March that he would not run for a 5th term. But this has done little to quell the mass protests. Susan Mongeli, CGTN.
Well, for some analysis on these latest developments in Algeria, we spoke to Mohamed Shakir, a professor of international politics at the School of Economics and Political Sciences at Cairo University in Egypt. Here's his take on the situation.
It is very significant movement, or it is very significant step that the chief of the army announced that we will protect the democracy and we will not protect the president anymore. So it is just like protection for the democracy and the people solution or the people choice. The army is not an isolated island. So the army is a part of people. So the army is moved now because the people said that they don't want Bouteflika anymore. So they respect the choice of the people, and they want to say that we will protect the choice of the people, whatever, even if it is against the President Bouteflika.
Nigeria's appeals court has granted a request from lawyers representing the main opposition candidate Atiku Abubakar to serve an election petition relating to the polls in which incumbent President Buhari emerged victorious. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
10 days have gone by since Atiku Abubakar's lawyers lodged a petition in the appeal court challenging the outcome of the just concluded presidential elections. But they have not been able to directly serve President Muhammadu Buhari, the incumbent president and winner of the February election. The lawyers blame the failure on the frustration by the bureaucracy around the president.
The Court of Appeal, sitting as the Presidential Election Petitions Court, granted an order in favor of Atiku and the PDP to serve the petition in this matter on Mr. Muhammadu Buhari. You know, we have already served on INEC and also on APC. So today we are happy this order has been granted to personally serve this petition by what we call substate means. And we are going now to serve the copy on the party, and that is the order of the court.
President Buhari was declared winner of the votes after polling more than 15 million votes. But Atiku Abubakar, candidate of the main opposition PDP, claims he won the election by 1.6 million votes. Nigeria's Electoral Commission, INEC, is the first respondent in the petition. Nigeria's Elections Tribunal Court is yet to set a date for the hearing. The elections were marred with violence and widespread card reader failures. In some cases, voting materials were delivered at polling stations several hours late. Atiku's lawyers are claiming the failings were mostly in his stronghold and they were deliberate to rig the election outcome in favor of President Buhari. 3 other presidential candidates are also petitioning the election tribunal to overturn the outcome of the elections. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Moving on to international news now, British Prime Minister Theresa May has offered to resign if Parliament will back her withdrawal deal. On the other hand, members of Parliament failed in their own attempt to break the deadlock, voting down all 8 alternative Brexit options. But as CGTN's Richard Bestek reports from London, there are doubts as to whether May will be allowed to bring her deal back to Parliament.
The UK Parliament, one of the world's oldest representative institutions, and Brexit testing it to the edge of destruction.
It was UK Prime Minister Theresa May's failure to win support for her Brexit deal with the European Union that led to members of Parliament rising up and taking power to find their own acceptable alternatives.
Speculation now that sacrificing her job might get May's twice-defeated deal across the line. Parliamentary Speaker John Bercow, however, said he'd attempt to stop it returning a third time unless it's fundamentally changed.
In order that there should be no misunderstanding, I wish to make clear that I do expect the government to meet the test of change.
Parliament's Brexit hijack, as some describe it, follows a weekend in which an estimated 1 million marchers called for the UK to remain in the European Union, and a petition on Parliament's website topped 6 million names. In Brussels, it prompted a call for a long delay to Brexit, allowing the UK to rethink its strategy.
You cannot betray the 6 million people who signed the petition to revoke Article 50. The 1 million people who marched for a people's vote, or the increasing majority of people who want to remain in the European Union.
On Monday, MPs will possibly be back here again, poring over favoured Brexit alternatives.
There's no guarantee that it'll all end happily, and every possibility that members of Parliament will find themselves agreeing about nothing. There's even a possibility of Theresa May's plan making a return. In short, the campaign over Brexit continues amid rising diplomatic and political damage. Richard Bestek, CGTN, London.
Well, let's get to the European Union reaction. For that, we turn to CGTN correspondent Mariam Zaidi with the latest from Brussels.
Currently, the EU's elite from the Commission, the Council, the Parliament, well, they're all in Strasbourg, France, for the EU Parliament's plenary session. And don't forget that this, too, is potentially the very last plenary session for UK MEPs. So another real example of how things do keep moving in the EU when it comes to all things Brexit. Now, at this plenary session, I think there's also been a little bit of scoffing at the fact that just as the original deadline for Article 50 is lapsing, the UK Parliament is now just being consulted on what or how the UK should leave the EU. In fact, there was a Brexit debate on Wednesday morning where EU politicians were pretty critical at how the UK government has handled Brexit since it triggered, of course, Article 50. But will Theresa May's resignation make any difference to Europe or how Brexit is handled? Well, I think that, during the Brexit debate that MEPs, of course, had on Wednesday morning, it was the EU lead Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier who said that they were, of course, following everything that the UK Parliament was doing, but that the EU's only interlocutor when it comes to everything Brexit was, of course, Theresa May. Well, that's potentially about to change. Mariam Zaidi, CGTN, Brussels.
Uganda's progress in tackling HIV is under threat from increasing drug resistance. The government and NGOs say the problem is particularly acute in rural areas which experience medical shortages. And as Leon Senyanga reports, a lack of access to antiretrovirals and the stigma associated with taking them is believed to be fueling the drug resistance, threatening efforts to fight the epidemic.
Singing against stigma, Moses Nsubuga is part of a group dedicated to tackling discrimination faced by Ugandans with HIV. He says when he was first diagnosed over 20 years ago, he often failed to take his antiretroviral drugs.
And when I started treatment in 1998, I did not take it well because I did not know the importance of adherence. So as a result, I developed HIV drug resistance in the year 2000. So I faced it so rough, I fell sick, I nearly died.
As a musician, Nsubuga is now part of a campaign push in Uganda for greater HIV drug adherence aimed at reducing the stigma surrounding the virus.
Most young people who fail think that they are the only one taking the medications. But when they see Stigmaless, they get changed. So I formed Stigmaless as a way of communicating to fellow people that it's important to take medications every day.
It's estimated 1.3 million people live with HIV in Uganda. But while more than 70% are enrolled on antiretroviral treatment, drug resistance continues to plague efforts to combat its spread. A 2018 study by the Uganda Virus Research Institute showed that there's a gradual increase in access to treatment by people living with HIV. However, such strides are facing a drawback, with 2 in every 10 resistant to antiretroviral drugs. Researchers blame the resistance on the lack of adherence to drug regimens prompted by poor access to drugs, as well as the stigma associated with taking them. Resistance is especially prevalent among mothers, children, and adolescents.
Every time you miss out your drugs, there's a window for the virus to mutate, as I said, to change into a form that will be resistant. And once that happens, much of the gains that we have got are going to be reversed.
Health officials say drug-resistant patients are switched to different drug regimens, but the medication can be very expensive and only available in small quantities. The government says it's looking for alternatives.
In the last 1 year, we have been working out what is the best treatment approach for our country that will give us maximum impact. And we have been looking at all the drugs, and there's a new drug which has come in, which you must have heard about, which is called dolutegravir, which we are now introducing in the treatment regimens as our first line for adults.
HIV infection rates have steadily declined over the last decade in Uganda, with a dramatic scaling up in treatment programs. The Uganda government says, despite recent setbacks, it wants to capitalize on that progress by encouraging more testing and treatment, behavior change, and eliminating mother-to-child transmission. Leon Senyanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Recapping your top stories this hour, Maltese armed forces have taken control of a merchant vessel allegedly hijacked by migrants. The migrants seized the vessel on Wednesday after they were rescued off the coast of Libya. They then ordered it to head towards Italy. The vessel, crew and the 120 migrants have now been handed over to police for further investigations. Both Italy and Malta had vowed to keep that vessel out of their territorial waters. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, health workers say public mistrust is now the biggest obstacle to stopping the Ebola epidemic, which has infected more than 1,000 people in eastern Congo since July last year. A report by Harvard University reveals that a quarter of the people surveyed in Ebola hotspots in the country believe the virus is not real. This means they are 15 times less likely to seek healthcare and 5 times less likely to accept vaccinations, with many concealing their symptoms. The risk of cholera is now becoming a major concern in and around Beira, Mozambique, as the floodwaters from Cyclone Idai subside. Makeshift camps are being established across the province and in the city to accommodate survivors. In Zimbabwe, government and aid agencies are struggling to help the displaced. They're scrambling to meet their most basic needs. And British Prime Minister Theresa May has offered to resign if Parliament will back her withdrawal deal. On the other hand, members of Parliament failed in their own attempt to break the deadlock, voting down all 8 alternative options. There are doubts, though, as to whether May will be allowed to bring her deal back to Parliament. Those are your top stories this hour. Coming up in your business news, a look at South Africa's Democratic Alliance proposals to keep the country's lights on. And Chinese technology giant Huawei's plans to drive advanced technology deeper into the East African market.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that, and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, China and the United States are about to start a new round of trade talks in Beijing. The Chinese Commerce Ministry says some progress has been made and the two sides are committed to negotiations.
The two sides have made some progress, but there remains much work to do. The U.S. delegation arrived in Beijing late this afternoon. The two sides will have a working dinner tonight and will hold consultations all day tomorrow. Next week, Vice Premier Liu He will visit Washington and hold the 9th round of China-U.S. trade talks. At present, the two sides are fully engaged in negotiations and work towards the implementation of the consensus between the two heads of state.
While turning to other issues, the spokesman expressed concerns about Japanese restrictions on telecommunication equipment makers Huawei and ZTE. He said this will hurt mutual trust between the two countries. He added the Ministry of Commerce is working to expand market access for foreign firms in China. Well, Chinese tech giant Huawei has signaled its intention to drive advanced technology deeper into the East African market. The company is partnering with Redington, the leading distributor of technology in Africa and the Middle East. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabo reports on the strategy.
Hundreds assembled at a hotel in Nairobi for the annual Huawei Partner Summit. These distributor partners are part of Chinese technology firm Huawei's efforts to avail its products to a wide market, which includes consumers, retailers, and small and medium enterprises. In 2018, Huawei Enterprise signed a distribution agreement with Redington in Kenya. With over 3,000 distributors spread across Africa, Redington is working to spread Huawei's advanced information technology products across the region. This is geared towards accelerating ICT development in East Africa.
During this cooperation, I think our local partner help us to better understand what's the real requirement from the end users. And also we continually to transfer the technology to the Kenya partners. So we invite a lot of partners, we join together to exchange the idea, and also we share what's the challenge from each other.
Through the forum, the partners are seeking to amplify their intention to drive the rise of advanced technology in the region. This summit comes at a time when companies across the globe are beginning to feel the effects of what is widely regarded as the fourth industrial revolution, with companies looking to ICT for solutions to everyday problems. In Kenya, the government has undertaken an ambitious development agenda, prioritizing affordable healthcare, housing, food security and manufacturing. Partners are keen to identify advanced ICT solutions to support this agenda.
We will see more inroads into private sector in technology in places like banks, telcos, government sector and other large corporates. And we will see them in other areas as well. I see looking, for example, we do healthcare, so we see IoT being a new play, as well as telemedicine. Huawei has a number of large solutions, for example, smart cities, and we will see ourselves working with them to develop and partner in developing and implementing these large projects.
Many of you know that we are the leading
Huawei also plans to open more data centers in Kenya as part of a broader expansion of its cloud services on the continent. Bilkis Anyabwa, CGTN in Nairobi.
South Africa's biggest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has called on the ANC government to take urgent action to alleviate the national energy crisis in the Western Cape and other parts of the country. DA leaders have challenged President Cyril Ramaphosa to allocate the Western Cape government a license to import liquid natural gas, which is cleaner and cheaper and would help prevent continued blackouts.
The Democratic Alliance notes that the nationwide power outages or load shedding by South Africa's embattled power utility Eskom has had a devastating effect on South Africans. But they have a solution to help keep the lights on in the Western Cape.
When this gas power station is running on diesel at full speed when we're in load shedding, this burns 6.3 million rands worth of diesel every hour. That's 50 homes for poor people every hour that gets burnt when this is running on diesel.
What is happening now, without any further damage, is creating a significant damage to our economy. South Africans are losing work. 10 million people are already unemployed. And by all accounts, as an outcome of load shedding, more people will lose their work.
The DA says it could help stabilize South Africa's national power grid if government allowed provinces such as the Western Cape province to get licenses so that they can procure energy from other independent power producers instead of just Eskom. And if some power stations, such as this one, ran on natural gas instead of diesel. The Democratic Alliance has failed in its bid to get Parliament to urgently address the national power crisis and is taking the matter to court. The party insists that its outrage over the national power outages has nothing to do with the struggle for political power in the build-up to South Africa's election in 6 weeks' time.
Why do we have to go to court to force you to do what is obvious? Let us make the decisions that are not narrow political, but of national interest. And that's why my call today is that give the license to the Western Cape, to the city of Cape Town, so that they can convert this into gas and we can ensure that the lights do stay on.
We need that gas allocation for the Western Cape so that we can start the work. We need it now. We need to start that work now because it takes months. And our country is going to be in this disastrous space of having not enough energy for our economy, not enough energy for jobs or households. So we need to start now. Let's not wait. Let's start now.
South Africa gets its power from state-owned Eskom that relies on coal and hydro to generate electricity. The DA proposal, if adopted, will introduce more diversified power generators to the grid. Renée Delcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Still in South Africa, an airline headhunting initiative has been described as one of the biggest tourism achievements in more than a decade. Cape Town Air Access is a public-private partnership which aims to increase direct connectivity between different new international routes. The initiative has also managed to score some major new direct flights into Cape Town recently, and that includes from China, Africa and Europe. CGTN's Travis Andrews has that report.
It's been a good year for the Air Access team. Not only have they managed to secure 13 new routes and 18 expanded routes, but they've also managed to secure direct connectivity to China, which is important for South African tourism and trade. Landing a Cathay Pacific direct flight from Hong Kong into Cape Town now increases the amount of Chinese tourists the Western Cape tourism sector will receive. But it speaks to the broader interest that some BRICS countries are showing in the mother city.
So we saw very substantial growth on the Brazilian market. So Brazil is one of our focus markets for the next few years. And of course also the Chinese market is very important for Cape Town and the Western Cape. And with the connection of Cathay Pacific, we think we are way better connected to China via Hong Kong with Cathay Pacific.
The initiative is a combined effort between the local government, the city, SA Tourism, Airports Company South Africa and Westgrow, who have all assisted in increasing passenger numbers through Cape Town International Airport by 20%, or nearly 11 million passengers per year. But the Air Access benefits are twofold, as it also increases trade between Cape Town and its new routes through air cargo.
Since we've opened up the Air Access routes, 52% increase in exports from Cape Town, from the Western Cape, into the destinations that we've created air access to. We also know that we're positioning, and Africa's positioning itself as the new gateway to development and business and future business with the rest of the world. Well, we're positioning ourselves as the gateway into Africa.
And more airlines have been won over by the Air Access success in adding more than 1.5 million two-way direct seats into Cape Town. So much so that both Johannesburg and Durban are establishing their very own version. Of course, African airlines are also finding the direct Cape Town route to be very profitable, including Air Botswana and Rwanda Air. Rwanda Air's Kigali to Cape Town direct flight has especially become very popular with those wanting to explore new and exciting cities on the continent, where tourism opportunities are being unlocked.
Over the past 10 months since we started operating into Cape Town and out of Cape Town, we've seen some over-expected sales out of here, and traffic-wise as well, directionally coming in both directions from the continent into Cape Town and out of Cape Town to the rest of the continent and the rest of our network has been surprisingly good for us.
For now, flights out of Turkey, Qatar, Kenya, Mauritius and Angola to Cape Town operate with frequency, but with attempts to position the city as Africa's travel hub, new direct connectivity throughout the globe is certainly on everyone's flight path. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, the application process for the Africa Netpreneur Prize initiative has officially opened to African entrepreneurs from all countries across the continent. Now, the competition has been founded by Jack Ma, or rather the Jack Ma Foundation, and will award $10 million to over 100 entrepreneurs over the next 10 years. The aim is to support and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs who are building a sustainable and inclusive economy. Only 10 finalists will be selected to compete in a final pitch competition. The Jack Ma Foundation has teamed up with regional partners, including NILAB, 22 on Sloan, 9 and Rise Up, to promote the prize in the respective regions. Applications opened online on March 27th and will run up to June 30th.
We're here today to launch the Netpreneur Prize initiative, which is a Jack Ma Foundation initiative initiated by Jack Ma's first visit to Kenya. In essence, we're going to give $1 million to deserving heroes across Africa, traditional businesses, grassroots businesses, women-led businesses. And that's why we're here today. Today we're here to launch the prize. And from launching the prize for the next 3 months, we will receive applications, filter through applications, and find the top 10 finalists who will share $1 million and receive support from the NILAB in the next 1 year to grow their businesses and continue impacting the society.
I heard about the Africa Netpreneur Prize Initiative from NILAB, and I thought it was the most amazing opportunity for business owners in all of Africa to be able to have a platform to showcase what it is they're doing, to be recognized, and also be offered the opportunity to network with others, and also just paint a different story about the entrepreneur who lives in Africa, because the stories that are out there are not very great. And so I think it's a great opportunity for small business owners who are not known, who are somewhere out there in Kisumu or in Mombasa or in Lilongwe or wherever it is that they are on the continent.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Nigerian tricycle driver defies the odds to earn a decent living despite his disability.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
It's estimated that there are over 27 million people with physical challenges living in Nigeria. And while many can be seen begging for alms on the streets of Lagos, there is one who has decided to stand out. Deji Bedmus has his story.
You just can't miss him in this busy tricycle park in Lagos. Every day of the week, 42-year-old tricycle driver Samson Onogbiku comes to this park in search of passengers for his tricycle. He's one of the few physically challenged persons in Nigeria who are defying the odds and rising above their disability to earn a decent living. He lost his right leg in a motorbike accident in 2009, costing him his job as well. But rather than turn to begging, he initially took to shoemaking.
But the shoemaking was not that fetching me money, so I have to switch to keke riding so that I could be able to take care of myself and my family.
He's been into the commercial tricycle business, which is locally known as keke, for about 6 years now. He makes up to 5,000 naira per day in over 20 trips, commuting passengers on short trips from one part of the city to another. But he says he still faces occasional discrimination.
When some people wanted to enter the keke, they see that I'm physically challenged, they did not enter again. But some people, I had one man that entered my keke. He told me that normally he did not want to enter the keke before, but because of my conditions, not to encourage me to walk. That is why I entered this my keke now.
In a country where unemployment is a big problem, Samson has found a way to overcome it despite his disability. And for anyone with a physical challenge like his, he has these words of encouragement.
With this condition, I'm married. With this condition, I'm able to buy this tricycle. I will just try to encourage him so that it will not feel somehow to him, you understand, so that he can still do all what he wants to do.
Eking a livelihood in a city like Lagos is not an easy task. It's even tougher for the disabled. But Samson has been able to take on the challenge with grit and determination. And today, apart from earning a living, he's helping in his own small way to solve the city's notorious traffic challenge. Deji Badmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And here's what's coming up in your sports news up next. South Africa's Proteas looking forward to a Cricket World Cup without the favourites tag.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.